Let's elaborate slightly more on induction and introduce another mode of reasoning.
To review, induction is when we make multiple observations under various conditions and then attempt to summarize the common features of all the observations into a universal hypothesis.
Here's another example of induction. I observed Alice got an A in a course. Bob also gets an A in the same course. Carol gets an A in the course too, and so does Daniel. From these observations, we can hypothesize through induction that all students in the course got an A.
How about the following example? We observe that Alice, Bob, Carol, and Daniel are all walking with a suitcase beside them. Based on these observations, we hypothesize they must all be going to the airport to take a flight.
Careful! Although we created a hypothesis based on several observations, this isn't induction. This case is not induction because we are no longer generalizing from observations. The hypothesis, on their way to the airport to take a flight, is not a pattern exhibited by our observations, but rather trying to suggest an explanation for what we have observed.
So if we used induction, would we have arrived at the hypothesis that everyone is walking with a suitcase beside them?
Exactly.
I see how this is different from induction. Does this type of reasoning have a name?
This way of thinking, where we suggest the best explanation for a set of observations, is known as abductive reasoning. The process is called abduction. Let us make more comparisons between induction and abduction. Suppose we have observed that Aaron, Betty, Cindy, and Danny have all forgotten to bring their umbrellas and are soaked. Let's try induction first.
Well, by identifying the pattern from these four cases and postulating that it should apply to everyone, we can suggest an inductive hypothesis that everyone has forgotten to bring their umbrellas and is soaked.
Perfect! Here's another example with similar observations. Aaron, Betty, Cindy, and Danny are all soaked, and it is raining outside. Now let's try abduction.
We can hypothesize that everybody must have forgotten to bring their umbrellas. Here we are attempting to explain why these four are soaked, filling in this gap ourselves. Thus, this is an example of abduction, not induction.
Indeed, note that this hypothesis does not follow any pattern from the observations. In fact, the term umbrella was not mentioned in the observations. As an extra exercise, I wonder what conclusion we might arrive at if we try to apply inductive reasoning in this example.